All right, welcome to another episode of the Mindset Breakthrough Show. My guest today is Laura Gale. Laura's awesome. Met her at a conference a couple years ago, and she's just delightful. And she's a ghostwriter with writes a bunch of kick-ass books for people. So thank you for joining us, Laura.
Thank you for having me, Brian. It's very exciting.
Yeah, you bet. Okay, so I've got no idea what you're going to talk about, so let's just dive right in. Apparently, you had some breakthrough from therapy or coaching.
I
Story
have
time,
had some
please.
big breakthroughs. Yeah. So I'm going to talk about therapy. I've done lots of coaching
Sweet.
too, but therapy is kind of what's been the big breakthrough. This is
Perfect.
my dog. um, Basically, you know, being a writer, value words very highly, but it wasn't really until I went to therapy that I understood how crucial it is to have a vocabulary about your emotional landscape to be able to accurately communicate about it. I just felt like I had no emotional literacy. Obviously, this is from a lens, several years after the fact and lots of time to think about it. But sorry, my dog is having a bit of a need some therapy also. Hey, bud, sorry, Brian.
That's fun.
Basically, I in 2018 went through a divorce and was just could not explain for the life of me what was wrong. I just couldn't put words to like why I was unhappy. I just was like, I know that this isn't working. I know it's not working, and I just can't explain it. And how do you maintain your credibility, your the how can you explain to someone like I don't want to do this anymore and not be able to give them a reason? You know, that's you can't, right? Like, and so
Yeah.
I went into therapy at that time, not really clear at that stage whether or not I was going to walk away from that relationship, but the therapist gave me this framework which just completely changed how I view the world, how I view my relationships. And it was basically that there are 5 basic core emotions. There's anger, fear, sadness, love, and desire, right? All pretty straightforward. There are, other people who have different frameworks and that kind of thing, but I'm an overthinker, and so having like very simple was really useful for me. Having these kind of mapped out, she explained that everything you feel, shame, envy, all of these like different feelings ultimately boil down to one of these 5 core ones. So when you're feeling, unsettled, well, what is it about the situation that's unsettling? If you strip it right down, what's at the core of that? Maybe it's sadness, maybe it's anger, whatever. But then that gives you a toolkit to say, okay, like I feel angry about this. What do I do when I'm angry? Okay, I need to explain why. I need to give an alternative. That it makes it into an if this then that, kind of
Okay. Yeah.
calculation in a
Yeah.
way. And for me, that was super helpful. What also really helped in that conversation was she mapped out all of the physical responses that you get in that go hand in hand with a particular emotion.
Mm.
So, to stick with the anger example, maybe you get really hot, you get like a tightness in your chest, you might feel your fists clench up, you might like grind your teeth. There's all of these things that might start happening before you've even clicked that you're feeling angry. Your
Totally.
body knows, and is reacting. And so if I start to get like that hackly feeling and I can feel my fingernails in my palms, probably I'm angry about something. And then it's like, oh, ding, like there's a physical cue to make me be like, you're angry, you need to cope with this. And so for me, that was just a gateway into kind of developing this sense of emotional literacy, being able to like quickly assess what I was feeling on the fly and then kind of go to a solution rather than feeling like I'm just tossed around in this kind of maelstrom of emotion that I have no control over
Oh,
and
wow.
I'm not able to get any help with or any resolution with.
Yeah.
So yeah, huge
Yeah. Like
shift.
you're just in this thing and you're like, I don't even know what it is or what to label it. Um, so yeah, I mean, it sounds like, was it like kind of like working through like each of the like different feelings with the therapist to kind of like get more clarity on them? So then out in your life, you can be like, oh, that's what's happening now.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, we did a lot of work together. We worked together for a few months, and I would kind of come to her and be like, "I had this situation this week, and I think it was this," and she'd be like, "Okay, let's unpack that a little bit." And she just gave me kind of a safe space to practice identifying my emotions and learning to articulate them. She was, we'll kind of role play a little bit, and she'll be like, okay, tell me how, okay, if I do this, what do you do? Like, what's your gut reaction to that? And so that gave me sort of a lot of clarity about, practice makes better, at least. And, it's not necessarily that you're going to get it perfect. You're not. But, having a bit of a sense of how to respond to a situation makes it easier every next time you come to it.
Cool. Yeah. So what was like the impact of that? Like, how did that start showing up in like beneficial ways in your life?
It just really stripped away all the confusion I had about my emotional life. It gave me a huge amount of clarity about that relationship, about my relationship with my family. I'm really sorry, my dog is having a bit of a meltdown.
That's all right. It's not too
loud. The kind of big thing that's happened in the ongoing kind of part of my life is that I've really adjusted how I feel about interacting with difficult people, right? So it used to like stress me out so much. If I got an email from somebody who I didn't get along with well, or, if, there are people all over your life where you're like, you're not really my person, but, here you are. The ability to cope with those people has just increased dramatically. And I think just being able to do kind of a quick physical check about, okay, how's my body reacting to this situation? Like, I think just understanding that your mind and your body are two parts of the same system, right?
Yeah.
And that your body is always communicating with you. And, I hadn't really understood that before. I'd had a lot of anxiety, and, I could explain to you definitely how anxiety feels. But I had never really put two and two together that actually my body was communicating something about that mental state. And so learning to read those physical cues, I think, gave me a lot of calm. It helped me just feel a lot more peaceful because I felt like I was understanding the situation a lot better.
Okay.
And yeah, having the language to explain it as well really validates the emotions. You can describe it, you can talk about it. But I think, also as a writer, you can't think about things if you don't have the words for them, right?
Yeah.
Like if there's no word for what you're experiencing, you can't think about it because, our brains run on language. We're completely verbal creatures. Like, we cannot function without a language framework. And so putting words to it all, I think, made it a lot more accessible. I feel like my emotional landscape became a lot more flexible, a lot more resilient, because now I had a framework that my brain could be like, okay, boom, this is how it fits into this like situation.
Cool. Okay. I got two questions came to mind. One was like, so for dealing with the difficult people, is it made easier because instead of you get an email from them and you just like start feeling these things and don't know what it is, like just being able to identify what the feeling is and then kind of understanding where it might be coming from, like is it like that alone is making it easier to deal with these difficult people, or is there something else about it?
Totally. So, I mean, often in that situation is that someone has said something that's made you angry, right? And anger is not a really socially acceptable emotion. A lot of the time, we're really kind of conditioned to stay away from anger because, historical precedent, there's a lot of danger that goes with anger. So, but I think it's a really crucial emotion because it highlights when a boundary has been crossed, right? Like,
nice.
If you are angry about something, it's because someone has done something that's not acceptable to you. And so it kind of came with the realization that I'm allowed to have boundaries and I'm allowed to have expectations for the people in my life. I think realizing that and kind of accepting like my experience of the world is as valid and important as that person's. And so I don't have to shy away from my anger if they are crossing a boundary with me.
Yeah.
So it gave me permission, I think, to feel that feeling, but also to be like, okay, I'm angry right now, and I know that that's emotion. It's also an emotion that passes. And so if I just let myself feel angry for as long as it's there, maybe it'll be 10 minutes, maybe it'll be a day, whatever. I don't have to react to this right now. I can come back to it when I'm calm and not feeling that way and can deal with it in a constructive way. But just understanding that that's where that's coming from kind of changes the power dynamic as well. You can kind of go to it as an equal rather than being on the back foot.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, was there some kind of like with the boundaries thing? You're saying like, okay, if you hear from somebody, then it's like, you know, they're difficult or whatever. Like, I imagine, was there an element of just like, oh, but like I need to like people pleasing, or just like I need to like fit and like make them happy, and then this kind of like helped you kind of like step away and be like, what's going on with me? Okay, what do I actually want in this situation? And bring more of yourself and what you want into the situation, instead of just being like reactive to what other people want and doing what they
Yeah.
want.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in an environment where conflict was pretty intense. And so I grew up being very conflict avoidant. Like I really did not want to get into conflict with anybody ever, preferably at all, ever. And so I had a lot of really avoidant mechanisms in place that was kind of protecting me in a way, but also sort of stunting my opportunity to grow by avoiding conflict. And so I think realizing that my anger is important and valid kind of gave me permission to start just experimenting, being like, what would it be like if I actually corrected that person when they spoke over me? What I started to think of it as experiments, right? Like, what would happen if I did this? And I'm only going to do it this one time, and I'm going to see what happens. And if it goes well, then I'll try it again. And if it doesn't, then I'll do something else. You know, it kind of it opened the pathway or the possibility for me to be a bit more conflict tolerant. And you know, I still don't like being in conflict, don't get me wrong, I'm never going to be the fighty type, but I definitely now feel a lot more like, no, I'm going to say the thing.
Cool. Yeah. And how's that work out for you?
Really good. People are very responsive.
Yeah,
it's so like people have this kind of like, sometimes they'll be taken aback, especially if they've known me for a long time, but I feel so much happier and so much more like I'm being who I am, which means that I think they feel like, okay, she actually trusts me quite a lot, because like to get into a conflict with somebody requires trust that they're not going to freak out and walk away. Right. And so to me, if I'm willing to get into conflict with somebody, it means that I care about the relationship and I care about the interaction. And if I don't know you, if I don't care about you, I'm just gonna be like, whatever, like I'm just gonna walk away from it. But you know, it's kind of become a way for me to be like, I trust you and I think that we're gonna be able to get through this, but that's not okay.
Oh, it's like a love language.
Yeah. It's a really ragey one.
Laura's having a conflict with me. That means she likes me. That's so cool. Awesome. Yeah. And then the other thing I wanted to know was like, so did you said like, okay, you were going through this divorce, but you couldn't like put into words like, hey, why are you divorcing me? We just need to stop. Like, so did understanding like the range of emotions help you? This is how I imagine it went. Let me know if I'm wrong and how it really went. Like, you understand the range of emotions, you find out what you're feeling, then you find out what are the things that contributed to that feeling, and then you realize like, oh yeah, it's these issues that are happening that are making me feel this way, that are making me not want to be in this marriage anymore. Was that kind of how it went, or something else?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I think, you know, I would love to say that I handled it very articulately and I got it all out perfectly. And, you know, every conversation we had was perfect. It was not. I got a lot wrong. And, you know, I was still trying to do my best kind of to articulate it for the first time in a lot of cases. But it was really reassuring to start to be able to explain myself, right? To be like, actually, when this happens, this is how I feel. Or when that thing happened all that time ago, this is the consequence of that. You know, to be able to start to put some structure around the problem was really helpful. And, you know, in the end, you know, we agreed that these problems were beyond our capacity to resolve. And so, you know, we walked away. But it definitely, it meant that I felt like actually I said what I needed to say. And he's not out in the world like, what the hell was that?
Like, it'd just be crazy. What the hell just
happened? Yeah, exactly. So, you know, and I think there's always going to be some ambiguity in the end of a relationship. There's, you know, you can never fully understand. Well, you know, in this case, maybe it's not true for everybody. In this case, there was never going to be total clarity about it. But I think, you know, we both got to a place where we understood the problem and could work through that. So yeah, it definitely was really revolutionary for me to be able to say, like, here's what I need, here's what I'm not getting, here's what has to happen, here's the resolutions that I see. Like, it made it just so much more within my control than it had felt before.
Do you see it as, like, now that you've learned this, do you kind of look around and see like, oh, people don't know this? Or do you feel yeah.
It's really interesting. It's actually changed my relationship with my dad a lot as well, because he grew up in a very scary environment, and he, as an adult, deals with fear by being angry. And I didn't understand that for a long time.
Yeah.
But having this framework, I've been like, why are you so angry in this moment? Like, I don't understand this reaction at all. And then to sort of be able to be like, okay, therapist hat on. What are you like? What's contributing to this? Why is this happening? And sort of peeling back, like, okay, if this happens, then it means this, and if that's true, then this is also true. So getting down to the core and be like, oh, you're afraid. Oh, okay, I can work with afraid. Like, it's completely, I guess, changed my ability to have empathy for him.
Wow. Nice.
And that's been really amazing. But I see it in so many situations. You see, like, a kid runs into the street and their parent like smacks them. That's because they're afraid. Like, it's not because they're an angry, out of control parent. They might have some control issues, but it's because they're afraid of the consequence of their child running into the street, right? Like, there's so much. I think it especially manifests around fear, because fear is also kind of a socially unacceptable feeling, right? No one wants to say that they're scared of stuff.
Right.
And so it comes out in different ways. And, same is true of sadness. Like, we're all great when everybody's in love or when you want something. That's fine. We know how to cope with those. But like the three kind of negative core emotions are really uncomfortable for a lot of people to observe, right? And so it's really hard, if you're feeling one of those things, to communicate it in a way that people don't get freaked out by. And so, I think it kind of forces the feeling into this weird sort of transmutation where it's not actually representative of what's going on. So I think the short answer is, it's given me a lot more empathy for people and a lot more patience really to find out what the actual problem is.
Nice. Yeah, I've found the same thing of so much, like, beneath anger is pretty much always like some fear, love, insecurity, sadness, like things like that. And anger is so often, especially for men, like the way that it gets expressed, or like, cause like men can't be sad, but they can sure as hell be angry because that makes them tough and all that kind of stuff. Like, so that's how they learn, like, that's the only emotion that a lot of people learn to have and share with people.
Yeah. And it's complicated, right? Like, you can have blends of these emotions, right? Like, if you have anger and sadness, that equals shame. Or if you have fear and sadness, that equals anxiety. Like, there's lots of like permutations of this where, you get, these funny emotional offshoots, but you sort of start to be like, okay, this is just a puzzle, right? Like, if I can figure out what combo of these key emotions is happening, then I can unpack why I'm feeling like this and start to get some resolution.
Yeah, that's what like I loved about the coaching I got into, was it was just about like helping see how so many of like the problems in our life is just like a deeper fear that we haven't acknowledged or know about, that's kind of running the show. It's just, and like helping people uncover that. And then once you see that, then you can like start doing like different things. But yeah, that was awesome. Is there anything else you want to share about your journey?
I think mostly just like understanding how powerful words are, right? Like, especially in the writing sphere, we know like the words you use really matter, and nowhere more than in your relationship with yourself.
Sweet. Yeah, words are super important, and if you gotta write a book, you need someone who's good with words, and Laura Gale's that. So if people, after this episode, if people want to find you, where do they go?
My website is lauraiswriting.com, so that's the best spot.
Okay. And then I think you also do like those, do you still do those writing retreats like in Portugal?
I did one this year, which was really awesome, went really well. 2 of the attendees are already published, which is amazing. So that's really cool. I haven't got another one scheduled at the moment, but yeah, it's definitely on the cards for the future.
Yeah, those make me jealous. They sound awesome. Cool. All right. And if you like this episode, head over to mccarthymindsetcoaching.com/join, hop on the email list, and you can make sure you get these emailed to you. So that's it. Bye.
Bye.